he said, so I'm going to go in the locker room. I'll just get changed. I'll put on some deodorant and I'll be out in just a few minutes. And so I got in the car and I started doing Wordle. And that's when I got the call you don't want, which is, Mom, I can't breathe. And I'm thanking them so much for coming so quickly and for taking care of my boy. And I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
But I follow that ambulance out of Denmark. And I follow him on Mullinax to McFarland. And we're approaching the McFarland 400 overpass. That's when I saw what no parent ever wants to see, which is the lights go on.
Yo, it's your boy, Phil WamBamSpodcast, and I am your host of today's show. We're going to mix it up a little bit today. We got something a little bit different to throw at you. This is a thing that we all want to avoid in life, but yet none of us are going to be able to. And unfortunately, we have somebody here today to share an experience that they went through, which is a parent's worst nightmare. That's right, we're talking about death. Losing somebody close to you, but not just somebody close, but your own child. Today's guest we have here to talk, Veronica Krutchen. Hi, Veronica. Thanks for being here today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Phil.
Absolutely. So, very, very unfortunate. First of all, my condolences go out to you, your family, for what you've gone through over the last year. About a year now he's passed.
Finley passed away in October of 24.
October 24th. So Finley being your son that we're talking about.
That's correct.
17 years old, if I'm not mistaken, at the time, playing football on the football field when this kind of happened or came aboard.
So Denmark does football practice pretty early in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, and we were there at football practice, and I stayed. He had been not feeling well, and I had stayed because we had a doctor's appointment to go to, and so he had to leave football practice a little early, and so I walked him off the field about 7:20, and I said, "How are you feeling, kid?" And he said, "Mom, I don't even stink. I barely did anything today. Smell my jersey." Now, as a football mom, you never want to smell the jersey, but I was like, all right, I'll smell your jersey.
Wait a second. As a football mom, you always smell the jersey because whether you want to or not, it stinks. Because as a football player, and I know this growing up playing a lot of football, we don't wash our shit. We just don't do it. And if mom doesn't do it, it doesn't get done. So
yeah, it's a pretty distinct smell.
Yeah.
But his smelled like soap, so that was pretty good. And he said, so I'm going to go in the locker room. I'll just get changed. I'll put on some deodorant and I'll be out in just a few minutes. And so I got in the car and I started doing Wordle. And that's when I got the call you don't want, which is, Mom, I can't breathe. So I went running into the locker room. I had the trainer's numbers on my phone. I called the trainer. He came in with the defibrillator in case we needed it. Finley had been having different issues. And
now at this time, I got to ask.
Sure.
Finley he's an athlete, so he's fairly healthy.
Very healthy.
Big kid. Mm-hmm. Wasn't he tall? Was he 6'2", 6'3"?
No, he's 6'4", 250.
6'4", 250. Big kid, Division I. Had to get a scholarship already to play football. Moving on, so
offensive tackle.
No signs of anything prior to this.
So Finny actually, we're going through the senior year football camps, and I'd been doing traveling for that in June, and he ended up getting sick. He got pneumonia and was in and out of children's quite a few times, just trying to figure out what was going on. I think he had like 3 or 4 COVID tests at that period because he was running fevers of like 104 plus. Wow. I actually, now that I have his phone, saw a text he sent his position coach, which said, he'd get a little delirious when he had high fevers, and he's like, "Hey, coach, I actually PR'd my fever today. I had 104.2 or something like that." And coach responded, "Oh, I'm glad we're PRing in something today." And but he had been sick and then had this cough that stayed with him. So that cough didn't ever go away, really. He got a little better after they treated the pneumonia, and but then he still had a cough. Which we ended up going to see a doctor about. There was a West game It was a first region game, and I served senior meals, and he called me before that senior meal and he said, "Hey, Mom, having a tough day today. Could you bring the migraine cap, and could you bring my ibuprofen and my Tums? I'm just having a tough day." And so he said he had some difficulty going up the stairs. So they go to the. Go ahead.
So hold on, I have to. I'm trying to really, get involved here to understand. He's having problems coughing right now. This came from he had pneumonia. You said
Yeah.
he has a fever, 104. So there's something going on in his body, but nobody could figure this out.
No, so that was in June. The West game was in September. So through the months of like July and August through summer practices, he was still having a cough, and even into September, right? So he was coughing up until he collapsed.
So, I can relate to this. I'm going to tell you a little story. I actually had a pulmonary embolism and actually kind of went through this. I had knee surgery years ago. And after the knee surgery, I came home. And I'll never forget this. My wife at the time had got me a Longhorn steak. And I could not chew the steak because I couldn't breathe. And to the point where I would put the meat in my mouth and I would try to, and it's like I couldn't swallow it because I was afraid I would die. Like I could not breathe. And if you never experienced that in your life, it's the most scary thing I ever went through in my life, because as they say, obviously the absence of oxygen is the presence of disease, type of thing. And we know that without oxygen, we do die. And immediately they took me to the ER at the time myself, and that's when the doctor said I had a pulmonary embolism in my lung at the time, which broke off, I guess, from the surgery. It's the only way they could come through that. And this is something that I don't know if the viewers know this, but I will share this because I went through this. I'll never forget, because I had my whole family was in the emergency room. And one of my buddies asked the doctor, said, "Well, Doc, how serious is this realistically?" And he said, "Well, 25% of the people won't come out of the surgery right now. We're going to take him back." And 25% of people. So I had a 1 in 4 shot of not seeing my family ever again. And that was scary because I was afraid to close my eyes because I didn't know if I'd ever be able to see them again. So I know what that's like. And it's a scary thing. And I remember when you kind of gave me a little PTSD here, talking about it, because, the coughing was something that started that.
Yeah.
And that's something that people don't realize is part of the diagnosis of a pulmonary embolism.
Yeah, and so he finally, like I kept saying, "Hey kid, this August, he's still coughing. He's having issues with lifts, like he's vomiting on the sidelines when they're having to run and do different things." He did well in the games that they had in August and through September, and like I said, they were coming into their region game, and the offense had actually been doing the best that they've done in the past 4 years. He was really proud about that. But he finally agreed. So he finally agreed on September 11th to go to a doctor. And so I'm like, okay, well, September 11th, I take him to one of the urgent cares. And the doctor looks at him, and they're talking. Finley wore a Whoop band, like measured all his also on his Whoop. It was showing that his recovery was a lot lower than it had been. He had been doing recovery at like 98 to 100% when he'd sleep. And he said to me like a couple days before that, "Mom, my recovery is only showing like 25%. And so he's like, maybe there's something wrong with this. But the doctor's talking to him about that. Finley's telling him about this cough that doesn't go away. And the doctor said, "Oh, well, you know what? We see this all the time. It's chronic cough syndrome. So we'll give you a couple more prednisone and you should be fine." Now, Finley had already been through prednisone treatment. But we were like, okay. And so when we got in the car, he's like, "See, Mom, there's nothing wrong with me." Meanwhile, he's like thinking, I can't even imagine what he's thinking. Because I asked him, I said, "Kid, what's taking you so long?" He's like, "I just figured I was out of shape." I'm like, You're a starting football athlete. You're not out of shape. You lift, you work out 3 or 4 hours a day, every day.
But sounds like a real caring kid. I never got to meet him, but just the way you're describing him, Let me ask you this. Were you very concerned, at the time for him, where maybe he was just trying to make you feel comfortable, thinking that he was okay? You know?
Yeah. So my husband has a history of having leukemia, having cancer when he was young in his early 20s. And Finley had said to me a few times, like, Mom, what if I'm dying? What if I have cancer? What if I'm dying? And I remember, because Finley didn't drive, so I got the distinct blessing of being his chauffeur. And I was like, kid, please don't put that out in the world. Please don't put that in the universe, because I don't know that I couldn't handle that. And he would come home from a lift too, even during this time. And he's like, Mom, I was having trouble with that lift. And he said, but what I pictured is he's like, I needed that last rep. I had to get the last rep. And he said, I just pictured you with a hole in your chest. And that got me through, because I can't imagine something happening to my mom. So when everything happened and Finley, we found out Finley wouldn't wake up. That was where I just went to his bedside. I said, is this what you pictured? Because as a parent, it's just not having your kid wake up. It feels like a hole. Yeah. It really does. Sorry.
No,
Sorry.
I take your time, relax.
There's a whole lot of the story that I skipped over with that, but yeah, so September 11th, we did go. He was having coughing issues, right? And then the West game was the following week. I think it was the 19th. In the meantime, also took him to gastroenterology because he was having a lot of GERD issues, reflux, eating Tums. And so the 16th, he went and saw a doctor, a gastrointestinal doctor, and they scheduled him to have an endoscopy and a Bravo camera placement on September the 30th. That West game happened on the 19th, and his oxygen levels dropped during the game, and they had to pull him. And I don't. They did one of the finger pulls that one of the trainers had to check his oxygen levels, and he was in the 80s, high 80s, I think. I don't remember, because I was just like, I got to get oxygen for my kid. And we didn't know what was going on. His oxygen levels came back up sitting on the sidelines. So he sat on the sidelines and gave everybody water. You've got your starting offensive right tackle going in and getting water for everybody. Maybe he was left. He was left. I'm sorry. I have to picture the field. But anyway.
That's where your better tackle is, on the left side.
Yeah. So
he was one of the better ones, obviously.
He definitely cared about his team and doing his job. And so anyway, the next morning I took him to CHOA urgent care, and they put him on an EKG. And one of the things that you may have learned in your experience, I didn't know, but I now know, Finley showed right heart strain on his EKG. His heart rate was elevated. He was telling him that he was lightheaded, that his legs got heavy, that he was having trouble breathing, and that he saw black dots. And so, he's on the EKG. She thought she heard a murmur, the doctor that checked him. They did the EKG. They did a chest x-ray as well, because I was like trying to relay it back to he had been sick in June and just had this cough and hadn't really recovered from this cough. And so they did the chest x-ray, which was clear, but for a pulmonary embolism, you need a CT scan. And they moved Finley back to, because of what the EKG was showing, they moved him into an observation room, where I think they could hook him up to the machine and send it to cardiology. So the doctor there was on with cardiology, and they said, I think they monitored Finley for 45 minutes or an hour. We were sitting back there, and he's taking his selfies with himself all hooked up to these strobes because, I don't know why he would take a selfie, but he did. And, I'm grateful that I have that now. But it ended up that the doctors, the cardiologist said they weren't too worried, just to get him in early the next week because this is a Friday. And I remember asking her, because, your kid having a heart problem, you've seen him have an issue at a game before. There's a cough that hasn't gone away. So he's obviously having issues. He doesn't just complain. He's not a complainer. I said, should I just take him right now to the emergency room? And I was told cardiology doesn't think that's necessary. Just get him in early next week. And so that's what we did. And he was in cardiology Monday morning at 8 a.m. And they did an echo and then cleared him.
So when you say they cleared him, what happens next?
So he's cleared from a cardiac standpoint, but I know he's still having issues.
You had to have been really frustrated.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, were you at a point where, let's get him out of Georgia. Let's find somewhere else. Let's get some answers.
Yeah.
I mean, did you get second opinions and stuff?
We took him. So that was on a Monday. Tuesday, we went to our primary care. I had gotten him in that appointment the week before and just kept it. And he said, well, you're seeing the right specialist. When we saw gastro on the 16th, he had said we needed to see pulmonology. I called pulmonology for children's because Finley was 17. So he had to see a children's pulmonologist. If you call adult pulmonologist, they look at his age, and even though 6'4", 250, they want you to see a children's pulmonologist. And I got the soonest appointment they had, which was November 11th. And so...
And this was what, September at the time?
Yes, that was September the 16th.
So you got 2 months you have to wait to even get in front of somebody.
Right.
And that's true. Like, that actually happens, and I never really understood that. It's like, oh, I could die from now till then, and nobody really cares. Mm-hmm. You won't see me sooner, or find another person that will.
And
that system's broke.
There's a big problem there. And, and then you have to see a specialist for every little thing. It's kind of like, I don't know if you remember the TV show Dr. House, but I was like, I just need a Dr. House to look at my kid because he doesn't complain. So I took him primary. They're thinking it may be asthma, because he's cleared from cardiology. He has a clear chest x-ray. So that Wednesday, I got him in with a doctor, Atlanta Asthma and Allergy, to look at him. They did some breathing tests on him. They showed that he got a 10% increase with Advair. So he got a prescription for that. But the doctor did say he's not presenting as an asthmatic. In that meantime, Finley was flying out Thursday to go up to New York. He was a prospect for Marist College in Poughkeepsie, and he had a visit. And, he had been cleared of everything, and they're thinking it's asthma. Maybe this breathing treatment will help. And so he got on the plane on Thursday. And at Marist, he was trying to walk up the stairs, and he couldn't. He was having difficulty. And what I can say is one of the most wonderful things, and I'm so blessed that Finley was a prospect for that school, because the head football coach there and his recruiting coach for the offensive line sat him down and said, you've got your spot here. You've already proved yourself. You play football. I don't want you to worry about your spot. I want you to go home and get your health taken care of, because there is something. At that camp in June, Finley ran circles. Like, he was popping out of one rep, going into another, both sides, right and left, doing a great job on all the drills. And so the coaches, just seeing the difference between what they had seen before, knew. And what a blessing that they said that. I just wish that, maybe we had even just taken him to the hospital there in New York. But he did have that pulmonology appointment when he got back, and we never made it to that. I finally had been able to, a friend of mine's daughter works up at Northside, and called a couple of people, and they were able to get Finley in with the pulmonologist, the adult pulmonologist.
So you flew back home that night. You flew back home from
So he
New
flew
York
back.
which is not the greatest thing to do when you have a pulmonary embolism,
That's
obviously.
right.
So that's a huge risk.
Yeah,
With that, but you did make it back home.
he did.
And then what happened then from there?
Yeah, so that was Sunday. He made it home. And then, Monday morning, we had that procedure for GERD because, again, they're also saying maybe it's the GERD causing issues with the breathing. And he went into CHOA first thing in the morning. And he had the endoscopy with a Bravo camera placed. He was sluggish coming out from the propofol, but he did make that, like he made it through that procedure, which again, with a pulmonary embolism, should never have been in that. So.
But nobody at this point even brought up a pulmonary embolism.
No.
They ruled all that out, but yet never really had the CT to figure that out.
I don't even think it was a thought. One of the other things for Finley is in our family, we have a clotting disorder called factor V Leiden. Finley was actually factor V Leiden positive. I knew that was also in his records, but I don't know what the issue is and why it's not viewed as a bigger problem for kids. But that is also something that led to this pulmonary embolism because he had this clotting disorder. And, football players in general, like when my husband has had blood clots, he's had a clot in a DVT, I know what to look for. You've got swelling in your leg. It'll get red. It's warm to the touch. And I still picture Finley like laying across the bed. He didn't have those things with his legs anyway. But football players get hit a lot. And football players are used to working through pain. So there's not a ton of thinking that if your leg is hurting or your arm is hurting, that could be a clot. And, it just wasn't even a thought.
So you're home now, went to Northside at this point. He's getting tested again.
So he's home now. He did CHOA with the Bravo camera that Tuesday morning. He has practice, and then we're going to the pulmonologist.
So he went back to practice.
Yeah, so
he was having trouble breathing and stuff. He was still trying to fight through it all.
Yeah. And he didn't practice. He was on the sidelines. So they didn't have him practice because the coaches knew that he was having some trouble, and they kept him on the sidelines. And that's why he didn't stink. Because bringing it all for full circle, because he just stood on the sidelines and didn't, he's like, that's why he didn't stink, because he didn't have to practice.
Right.
Although coach did tell me that he was yelling at the new guys that were pulling up into his position, being like, come on. How can you miss that?
Yeah. So walk us through from that point on. And
Okay. So Finley calls me. He's in the locker room, and I'm in the car with my Wordle. He can't breathe. So I go running into the locker room, and he's the only one in there because the rest of the team is still on the field because he was leaving early to go to our pulmonology appointment. And he's got his chest against the, in front of his locker, there's a wooden bench, and he's leaning up against it. And he's like, Mom, I just can't breathe. And I'm like, Finley, calm down, kiddo. Like, just be calm. Try to be calm. And maybe that'll help. Sometimes when you get all worked up, it makes it worse. And he's like, I'm trying. And I said, okay. And like I said, I called the trainer, had his number on my phone. He came running in with all of his bag, and believe he had the defibrillator with him as well, just in case. He's taking Finley's pulse. Finley is on the floor, and he had in the locker room. So when I went in there, he made it, he said he woke up, but he was only in there a few minutes, so he must have collapsed. And so we call the ambulance because they're like, I think I can get him stable and put him in your car. And I said, no, I need an ambulance for him. I could tell something wasn't right. His color wasn't right. He was sweating. He had started sweating a lot on his face and his head. And so football practice is letting up. We're still in the locker room. The first fire truck has come. It's a firehouse that doesn't have an ambulance. So the truck came and they brought some folks in, but they had called the EMS crew, which was at another. And so they were en route. This is at the time too, where a lot of students are coming in at Denmark, getting ready for the day. The parking lot is filling. My car is still out there. EMS comes in and they get Finley stable and they get him on the gurney. And I'm thanking them so much for coming so quickly and for taking care of my boy. And I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
There's a female medic, and she seems to be the one that's in charge. And I'm like, can I ride in the ambulance? And she said, why don't you follow us? We have him stable. And so we're going to go non-emergent to the hospital. And so I said, okay. So I get in my car, and she's talking to me, she's going back into the ambulance, and I get in my car, and I can see the doors are closed, and I can see Finley's big hand go up like he's trying to tell him something. But I follow that ambulance out of Denmark, and I follow him on Mullinax to McFarland, and we're approaching the McFarland 400 overpass. And that's when I saw what no parent ever wants to see, which is the lights go on. And the EMS wear like bright yellow vest. And I see her, the EMS. I see her get on top of Finley and start doing compressions. And so I think I was on the phone with my friend Laura because her daughter is a ER nurse at Northside Forsyth. And
Talk about Miranda.
yes.
Yeah, she was actually on the pod as well.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing.
She is great. She's unbelievable.
Yeah, and so we ended up, I get off the phone. I call my husband because he's waiting there for us, and I tell him, I said, Jed, I need you to. We're coming in a bus, and they're doing CPR on Finley right now, and I'm just praying. I'm praying to God with everything I have that Finley makes it. Like, please don't take my boy. And that group worked so hard on him. It was 90 minutes of CPR, and I went into that room with him. They right inside where the ambulance comes in. They put him in the very first room, and there was a whole medical team there. I think we had pulmonology, we had cardiology, we had the ER docs. And that's, he's seeming to be responding because I'm just like in there with him saying, please, Finley, please stay with Mom. And
did he respond to you? Was he awake? Did he know you?
No, he never woke up. I never talked to him again after the locker room when he was being wheeled out. That was the last time I talked to him, when I said, I'll be right behind you. And the doctor's there. I'm telling them all the things that have happened the week before. I'm telling them about the endoscopy. I'm telling them about the echocardiogram. I'm telling them about I'm telling them all the things. And one of the doctors said to me, can you pull up his medical record? And I said, I've got my chart on my phone, and I'm trying to pull it up. And I held my phone to him, and I said, I don't know what I'm looking at. And so he took my phone and he pulled up
the record and went to his computer. And then I heard him say, "There it is." And they, after multiple rounds of, I think they do epis. I don't know. Bolsters are giving him all kinds of things. They're doing compressions. They're shocking, and they called for the ECMO unit from Gwinnett. And I can tell you, those people are amazing. That team, normally you'd have to wait for an ambulance. That wasn't going to be fast enough, so they packed that ECMO into the back of a Suburban, and they got over to Northside for size so quickly. And it was just such a godsend that they arrived, and then they got Finley put on ECMO. And we were just so incredibly hopeful because it was 90 minutes of medical CPR. And, and I just never believed that God would need my son. I just didn't, something that's not in the same vein, but I had lost twins halfway through a pregnancy. So in my mind, God's already got 2 children, and he doesn't need Finley like he gave me Finley and Ian, because, I just didn't believe he would not make it. No. And, but what we found out, he responded well to ECMO. He was breathing over his ventilator, and they do different tests, and he was responding to those. Like, they check for your eye reactivity, and if they squeeze, like, they do a bunch of different tests. And he had been doing really well, but because he had that Bravo camera, we couldn't do an MRI. And backtracking, once they got him to Northside Gwinnett, they took him in and did the CT, and they saw the clot. And so they came and said, "We found it. There's a huge clot there, and we're going to take it out." And so I said, "Great." I was in the cafeteria, had all of our coaches, so much support from Forsyth County, counseling teams, from our principal, Miss Oliver. She was amazing. Our head football coach, Finney's position coach. Like, we had a table full of people there, and we were all praying and having some, just something to drink while we were waiting, because they had him in that procedure. And the doctor came out and came to the cafeteria to let me know he was out, and that they had pulled the clot out, which she gave me a picture of. And she said it was the largest clot that they had ever pulled out of anyone at Northside Gwinnett, which is one of our leading heart and lung hospitals, is my understanding. And she said that it was a miracle that he was walking that morning. And it showed in the pictures, he had been throwing clots for a while. There was the dark blood for older clots, and then there was still bright red, so you could see all the different variations. But we were still so hopeful that Finley would pull through. And once they got him off ECMO, he wasn't waking up. And so I think it was a Saturday morning, and they did an MRI. They pulled out the Bravo camera, and they did the MRI. And it showed deep gray matter death, or brain, like severe brain trauma from, even though it was 90 minutes of medical CPR, that clot being as large as it was a saddle pulmonary embolism, so covering both lobes. It didn't let any of the blood be oxygenated going to his brain. So they let us pray about it, because he was 17. They gave additional time, and just to see if there might be some recovery. And anyway, the worst did happen, that he wouldn't wake up. His brain was swelling. Because he was so anticoagulated, they couldn't really do anything for the swelling. And eventually he stopped responding to any of the checks that they do.
I don't even know what to say, Veronica. I mean, I'm not good with death anyways, but when you have somebody like yourself and you can just see the love in your eyes, and it's your kid. Nobody wants that to happen to their kids. It's like, take me, take me, not my kid.
Yeah,
right?
it is.
Yeah.
And so, sadly, the worst did happen, right? And then it's honoring this kid.
Mm-hmm.
This kid who was larger than life, who would walk the hallways of his high school saying hello to everybody, who brought smiles everywhere he went, who was known for his kindness. It's honoring that life. Finley was always a helper, so we knew that organ donation was something that he would want to do. We had actually talked about it, although he didn't drive, so he didn't have a driver's license. He did have a permit, which was expired.
Oh, that's right. When you drive, you get a choice whether or not you want to donate your organs and stuff.
And
but he told you, this is what I want.
Yeah, we had talked about it, and I was like, I'm an organ donor. When you eventually get your driver's license, you'll get to make this choice. And so we had talked about that. But if you didn't know, learner's permits do expire after 2 years. So he did have that expired permit. And so we did go through the organ donation process for Finley. And so his story continues. He was able to, there was a gentleman, and one of the things people don't know is when you're going through organ donation, it's not like you see in the movies. It's not instantaneous. Oh, they're running into the room and they've got something ready to go. It's a process, and because of all the things that they have to do with the GBI, and also through the process of just making sure they take them off all the medication and there is no response. That goes for a couple of days. And so once all of that is cleared, then they're able to start placing organs. And so he was able to save a 55-year-old man in Texas with his heart and a kidney.
Oh, so you know this. They gave you the details. Okay.
Yes. So, Phil, it is the worst nightmare. And so you just try to make the best. And so making the best is helping others in his honor and in his name. And there was, it's my understanding, a young woman locally, I think 15, who got his other kidney. And he gave the gift of sight. And we did tissue as well. And so he's been able to help people with that. The one thing they weren't able to use were his lungs. And also because of the factor V, his liver. So we couldn't use that either. But his story does continue, and he is living on. He is living on it.
Hi, I'm Phil Benamino, CEO and founder of Cost Plus Processing, the company that provides financial services to your business. We provide things such as POS systems, ATM machines, and check services. One of the biggest things that we strive ourselves here at Cost Plus Processing is our customer service. We are an A+ rated with the BBB with customer service, and we're proud to say we're here in the United States with all of our customer service agents. Our objective is to actually teach you and educate you about the costs that you're currently paying and show you ways where you can eliminate those costs that you no longer have to pay. One of the biggest programs that are out there today is our dual pricing program, where you actually can offer your customers now a choice of how they want to pay. Do they want to pay with cash or do they want to pay with card? And if they pay with card, it actually helps you to absorb the card fees, so you no longer have to pay the fees like you've done for many, many years. Cost Plus Processing aligns ourselves with some of the top POS companies out there in the industry today. For example, we have perfected the car dealership industry, and our dedicated team are equipped to manage a variety of online payment forms and financing options that merchants require in this advanced ecosystem of payments. If you have a restaurant, we are proud to be able to manage the ongoing difficulties that arise from this fast-paced industry, and you're looking for pay at the table, where customers can easily swipe their cards, tap their cards, and make their payments with tip, and also have a choice of how they want to pay, we have the solutions for you here at Cost Plus. We want to help other small business owners make their dreams come true by providing the best financial support. From barbershops to liquor stores, having the ability to take payments scheduled online and make calculating tip sharing an easy task only helps business owners put more attention and money into what really matters the most. Also, cost plus processing is on the front end of AI. We can also provide you kiosks for your business, so customers can walk over to the kiosk and order anything that they want. Likewise, if you're having problem getting employees in the kitchen to work, we can also provide you robots that will actually deliver your food straight to the customer. I want to thank you for the time that you took to learn a little bit about cost plus processing, and most importantly, why we are the future of merchant processing. You know, it's amazing that you've been able to, you know, channel everything into a positive way because, you know, let's face it, none of us are getting out of here alive. Yeah. We're just not, right? Our day is going to come. Again, you don't want your child to go through it before you. You don't want to bury your child. You just don't. I don't care how old you are. You can be 80 years old. You still don't want to bury your kid, you know, type of thing. But the reality is, you know, it's going to happen one day, and how you handle it and how you treat it is what's important. And I think what you said, it's not living, because we all live, but it's how did you live? And by keeping his spirit alive, by doing the things that you're doing, which you're doing some amazing stuff. We're going to talk about that in a moment. You know, it does represent what his life was about. You know what I mean? And you got to be proud of that. And I know you are, but that's how you want to remember, you know, your kid, the moments of the smiles that he put on other people's faces. And, you know, like you said, just giving a 55-year-old another chance with his heart. You know, he's doing things with his life, you know, with his presence when he was here. So, you know, it's great you're able to do that, because so many people shut down. And I give you a lot of, a lot of honor that you're doing this, because most parents, you know, wouldn't, you know, they would go in a shell. I know I would. I think I would probably, you wouldn't see me for a while, you know. It would be very, very tough. So to channel that into something positive is amazing. So, you know, let's talk a little bit about that. Talk a little about some of the things that you are doing and what you've been able to do. And we all know why, you know, but the real reason behind it all.
Yeah. So, you know, Finley was and is someone, like I said, just made an impact on so many people. He was very faith-based, and told his girlfriend one time, you can't hang out with me today because I've got to read my Bible and I'm going to make some butter. Because he would sit on the couch with his arm workout, just shaking and making butter. So just a quirky kid, a lot of fun. And so one of the things that we've done is we've set up a foundation in his honor and in his name. So the football, when it first happened, Finley was one of the first ones who would lead the team to the goalpost to pray before games. So, you know, the school set up a prayer vigil, and then the students also set up a prayer vigil after. And so we did the hashtag Pray Like Finley, because we needed everyone to pray that Finley would pull through. And I actually got to talk to the student body at the first prayer vigil. And, you know, it's not only about Finley, it's about the community of people that he was a part of, and how many kids and friends. And, you know, you and I, we have tools. So yes, grief and death are so hard. And it's hard for me, and, you know, the best friend sitting there who doesn't understand, you know, the girlfriend, it's all the kids that they don't necessarily have the tools. So I wanted to reframe for them, you know, just sometimes miracles look a little different, right? So our miracle ended up looking different. But they can all have a part with us with the Finley Krutchen Foundation. They wanted to use hashtag LL74. It stands for Live Like, Love Like, and Long Live Finley Krutchen. 74 was his jersey number. And so, you know, we're moving forward with that. We're raising awareness about Factor V Leiden, about blood clotting disorders in kids. We were able to get Governor Kemp to sign a proclamation. There's another mom who reached out to me when all of this happened. Her son, Bryce, was a football player at Furman University. They didn't know he was Factor V Leiden, but he collapsed
on the football field during spring practice at Furman in February of 24. And so we've connected, and in both of our boys' names and honors are trying to make a difference. One of which, the first step being a proclamation for March to be declared as Blood Clot Awareness Month in the state of Georgia. So Governor Kemp did that. Mayor Brumbelow for City of Cumming also did a proclamation.
That's great.
The city of Ackworth as well. So, we're making a difference that way. We're getting students involved. So Finley was a student athlete. He had a pretty good GPA, but it's not about the GPA. It's about the character for the Finley Krutchen Memorial Scholarship. And we just gave out 8 $1,000 scholarships to student athletes that lived the way that Finley would want to live, that try to make school better for others, and try to help us carry forward his legacy of kindness. And we're hopeful that next year we'll be able to do it through more than just Denmark. We'll do more schools. And we're trying to do an initiative on Fridays. I like to call them Fin Fridays. And so we ask students, anyone who really wants to participate, to do something kind for someone else. And then just kind of recognize it in social media with hashtag Fin Friday. So
I love that.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. There needs to be a lot more acts of kindness for that. So
yeah, it was this past week, it was really wonderful because we did Fin Friday on a Saturday, and we took 4 dozen crumble cookies to the ER at Northside Forsyth, and got to see one of the doctors that worked on Finley, and just say thank you to them, for all the hard work that they do, and the
I mean, that's incredible. I mean, you even take time to do that, because let's be honest, some of them doctors probably feel horrible, the fact that they couldn't save them, and understand that, and probably never thought they would ever probably see you again. So for you to actually go in there and do that act of kindness shows why Finley was the kind of kid he is. So,
Yep. I can honestly say that quite a few people that were on his care team for those days, the ER doctor, he actually came to the prayer vigil, and he texted me to check in on me. The cardiologist and cardiology team, same. So I've really been very blessed, and they're helping me carry on Finley's legacy. So I'm really grateful. And I also want to say thank you to them, because if it wasn't for their hard work, if it wasn't for that ECMO team getting there, he couldn't have been the blessing that he was to others, with his organ donation.
Yeah.
So, it really took a team effort. And yes, it didn't end the way I wanted. The miracle looks different, and I just have to keep telling myself that. And I still live in disbelief. So much of the day to get through the day, he's just at school. He's just at school. Night times are tough because Finn was a homebody. He was really focused on school and sport, and he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He's teaching himself Japanese,
Wow.
how to read it, how to write it, and how to speak it, because his goal was to program. And Marist has one of the top computer science programs with the football programs that he was looking at. So it was really,
Wow.
So yeah.
How can people find you right now? How can they donate? How can they give to your charity? Where can they find you? Tell the viewers real quick.
Yeah. So we've got a website. It's ll74.org. And I try to post updates. It's a one-woman show at the moment, although I do have a team of people who are willing, ready, and who have been helping. And I'm so grateful for them. We're looking at doing some different fundraising efforts in the future. And we've got T-shirts that we're getting in the works. We want to do some initiatives where we get our elementary school students involved in T-shirt design. And we're working on some kindness clubs in different schools as well. So
Yeah, right now the best way is ll74.org. We're on Facebook and we're also on Instagram, Finley Krutchen Foundation. And we're just looking forward to doing good and to making change in Finley's name and in his honor. I've got an older son, Ian, who's also Factor V light and positive. And, we as parents, we carry that when we have a child that passes away. But, as a sibling, watching what he's having to go through as well, it just makes me want to help build something that we can remember Finley and carry his spirit forward.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Anything else that you want to tell the folks a little bit, education-wise? There's a lot of people out there that don't know the pain until you actually experience it. But when you experience it, a lot of people don't know how to deal with it. You've done an amazing job dealing with it, and I think I know it's hard. I know you got this big shell on as well, but the reality is you've turned it in such a positive, way, utilizing his spirit, and memory and stuff. What should people do first? Like, what got you through this?
That's a hard one because I still haven't, I need to find a therapist and go through therapy. I haven't done that yet. For me, it's really been the drive to honor my son and honor his memory and be strong for Ian. I have a lot of work still to do, but that's really what I've focused on. Finley, very logical young man. And I remember we were talking about a pet had passed away. And he and I were talking about that even recently, within the last year and a half. And, we're at 7 months that he's been gone. And so recently is a year and a half. And he said, you and Ian just cried so much when Hoover passed away. And I said, it was very sad. Yes, we did. And he goes, but crying didn't accomplish anything. You got to move forward. And so I spend time crying. I get a lot of boohoos out. I do best with my boohoos by myself. But
you realize that wasn't
a
a coincidence. I believe that. I believe God works in different ways and through different ways in people. And you sharing that with us now, I mean, that's clearly was what he was trying to say is, hey, don't cry for me, move on because it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
So that was a message. That's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
So, and I think when people open up their hearts, and I think when you open up to God and you realize it, and you look back and you reflect, there are signs. There are signs along the way, and they'll continue the signs, throughout. So if Finley was here right now today, what do you think he would say to you?
What I hope he would say is keep doing the work. Help other people. It is my goal to change the narrative, to have this be something that if the signs are there, it's actually something they think about for kids, and to save other kids' lives. So I really hope that Finley looks down with pride and says, Mom, keep doing the work.
Yeah. Oh, you're amazing. I appreciate that. Well, there you have it, folks. Remember, always love the ones that are closest to you because you never know if that'll be the last time you'll be able to say anything to them. And be kind to the ones that aren't because you know what? The act of kindness takes zero effort. Live through Finny. Live through his spirit. Live through what he's trying to do and the goals here throughout the family. And that's just it. Be kind to all. Till next Wednesday, I'm out.